Hi. I'm doing a devotional for my speech class, and I figured I'd record myself practicing it. So, here goes. This year, I just finished my first semester of my senior year, and I had a one-semester class called Government. And I thoroughly enjoyed the class, but one thing that constantly was coming to my mind: what should a Christian's response to government be? So the answer came when I was reading Romans chapter 13. And I encourage you to read all of Romans chapter 13, but we're just going to focus on verses 1 through 4 and just break down some things that I drew from that. Two of which being, why should we be subject to authority or governments in place, and why we should obey. And I know they kind of sound similar, so I'll break it down for you here. Being subject means putting yourself below someone or an authority figure, and then obeying is doing that which is right. Period. Doing that which is right. So, first of all, I'm going to read the passage. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt receive praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is a minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So first of all, we are going to look at why should Christians be subject to government. Well, it says in verse 1, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. So if you think about it, God established government. Think about it this way. God created dirt, and then God created man out of dirt. And then he put this man in a garden and put him into deep sleep, made a woman. They're both there. And then he told them, don't eat of this one tree. It's exactly what they did. But nonetheless, don't eat of this one tree. That was a law. That was a government, a theocracy, if you please. So this has been established since the beginning of time. And then it says in verse 2, whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. So, from what this is saying, resistance to God equals resistance to government. I don't think we really want to think that way. Ever. We don't want to be subject. No one wants to be under anyone else's authority, really. But I considered this. The Jews in Egypt were slaves. They had no rights, and they were beaten and worked very, very hard. And it says God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. So in Egypt, They had to leave at the appointed time that God wanted them to leave. He put them in that situation for a specific purpose. Receive praise of the same, for he, being the authority figure, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Whoa. So, if we do what is right, we shouldn't be afraid of the government. Now it says, in my Sunday school lesson this last Sunday, we had a discussion about, I believe, Peter and John. Let me get it up here. In verses, Acts chapter 4, verses 21 and 22. And it says, so when they, being, I believe, the Sanhedrin, so when they had further threatened him, they let them go, finding nothing how they might punish them because of the people, for all men glorify God for that which is done. So what had happened here is Peter and John had healed a man, and he was walking and leaping and praising God, and the Sanhedrin put them in prison. So once they released them, they were trying to find different things to accuse them of, stop speaking in this man's name, all that stuff. But when it came right down to it, the testimony of the people and this man standing right in front of them that wasn't able to walk since he was born was standing right there. They did what was right. And therefore, they didn't have to fear the authority in place. So, but while we're thinking about that, we also have to take into account, if we do that which is wrong, we should be afraid. Because as it says, he beareth not the sword in vain. So if we do that which is wrong, we will be punished for it. So we should understand that Christians need to be subject to government, and they also need to obey government. The conclusion I came to when I finished my government class is that if you have sinful people in government and in your country, you're going to have problems. But it is a Christian's responsibility to remember that the Creator of the universe is in control. Bye. Whew. I hope I did that right. Required a lot of thinking.